Take me back to when you first get this role of Aquaman. What did you want to bring to the role at that time? Do you feel like you've succeeded, or is there still more that you're dying to explore?
Everything that Zach had come up with when I was called in the first time, we have definitely pulled it off. There are moments that are I would love to explore. I think there's tons of room to explore more, and would love to do it in a sequel. But fans got to go. I've done a lot of them, and people wanted other ones, but you hope they like it, and then there's definitely more we can do.
They bring the classic suit back for this film. I know fans were very excited about it. It's very important to them to see Aquaman in that suit. How was it for you to see yourself in that suit for the first time?
I've been using surreal a lot because I can't believe, I'm here. I can't believe I'm Aquaman. It's a very surreal thing. So, and the suit, when I first signed on, Zach was like, "Oh no, we're not." He's not there yet. So, which was great. I was like, "Okay, cool." There's a long road and journey to becoming the king, which I can dig. I like the idea of him being flawed and reluctant to being the king. And it's the last frames of our movie. He finally becomes that. So there's a whole new world of him just owning up to being the king of Atlantis. When I put it on, I didn't have a mirror, so I put it on, and James was there in the other room. And then when I walked out, I got to see his face, and he's very animated and he's like me. We're both very similar. Where when we express our joy, we get loud, and he was quiet, and I could just see his joy like busting out of his eyes, and that was a huge deal for him to get that right. I mean, it was truthfully all in his hands to get it right. It's his vision.
Now that you've rocked that one and the Justice League one, do you have a favorite?
You know what? I thought I would have liked the Justice League one better, but I think I like the Aquaman. The gold is pretty cool, and I like the trident. I think it's finally having the 3-prong and just the whole shape of it looking like a sword, and
it's like now I'm Aquaman.
Now I'm the king. It's nice to be king.
So how important of a conversation was tone in this film? Because I feel like it is lighter. It feels funnier than the previous incarnations that we saw of you in Justice League.
I don't know. We were pretty. I think we wanted to make a smart ass. We wanted someone who would punch Batman in the face and question what Wonder Woman said. And we wanted someone to stir the pot. So we definitely were our own version of funny without being like slack. I mean, I don't want to be that. I wanted to be, I was hired to play. He wanted the outlaw Josie Wales. He wanted someone that was just on the outskirts and very feral, and that was fun. And that's a weekend in Arthur's life. I was hoping that fans would stick around, that we could get to this, so that you can see why he was the way that he was. And that's what James created, is the intimacy of seeing what he was like as a boy, and then the moment he leaves Justice League, he comes back home to his father. He's been on the road for a long time, running and hiding, and he's coming home and having a pint with his dad, and then shit hits the fan again, and he's got to believe in himself, but it's all the people around him that believe him to be king when he doesn't himself. So I think you needed both of them.
Yeah.
I like what both directors did, and this is a total different look. I mean, we're barely underwater in Zach's film, so this is all 50% of it's just this road journey, this road movie to and being underwater. I think it has to be vibrant like this. I think it has to have those colors. It's going to be special, especially my mom and my family in Iowa. It's cold and negative whatever and snow, and you're going to go and see this. I think it's going to in Russia and in Canada and in the Northern Hemisphere, it's going to be a pretty awesome experience. And then everyone in the Southern Hemisphere is pretty stoked too, because they're all brown. You know what I mean? So it's going to be, it feels like Australia. Like you're going to want to be, it resembles a lot of things, and it's going to make you want to be there when you're in the cold.
Lastly, we talked about representation briefly, but this year is really much anchored by two films, comic book films featuring superheroes of color. And I'm curious, how important is representation in these kinds of films right now?
I mean, the world just is looking that way, and I don't want to feel like it's a race thing, and but I mean, Black Panther, what a beautiful world, and that we can tell that story right now, and that it did so well. That's phenomenal. We haven't had that outlet. Zach's a genius to come up with that. You know, the Polynesian race should be. Aquaman could be half of that. You know how that feels for anyone that's, you know. All these interviews where they're talking to people from Argentina or Colombia or Malaysia, Singapore, and you know the islands, and it's just like, wow, there's so many brown skin, half mixed race, and I didn't sign on to go like, wow, that's the reason why is I need to support that, but it's going to be interesting how that affects the world, and if I was, my son's age, and saw this, and I was, my wife's Jewish and black. From the 60s, that's a pretty radical thing, and I'm like German, Irish, and Hawaiian. It's just the world, you know what I mean? And it's not that it's like, I don't want to be like, I don't know. I just think, it's a special time for that, and then it hasn't happened yet, and it's 2019 in a second, and very cool. You know what I mean?
Above and below.
Hey, wait!
What?
Should we have written it down first?
I memorized it. Didn't you?
Oh, yeah, totally.
What did you just say?
Something trident.
All right, so talk to me about when this role first came to you. Did you leap at it? Because this is unlike anything that you've done before.
It's really nice to go into this world in this way. I have to be honest about that. It's kind of exciting way to do it. But no, you're right. I didn't necessarily think that the call had gone to the right person when I initially got the call. And Zach, I remember speaking to Zack Snyder, who cast me in Justice League, with the idea that it could potentially become Aquaman. I remember speaking to him and thinking, what about the superhero genre? I'm thinking hypersexualized, kind of limited archetypal roles that don't really appeal to the kind of my sensibilities or speak to the complexities or nuances of the female experience necessarily. And he told me, no, not with this one. This is Mera's a badass character. She's no damsel in distress. She is a warrior queen. And I thought, I could do all right with a sword and a crown. All right. And I read the comic, and I was pleasantly surprised to find her just as empowered and strong and fierce of a character as he had alluded to. I meet her in the comic book, and she, right in the first scene, that I meet her and Arthur, Aquaman, and they're after rescuing a coastal town, she hears a villager, a townsman, and mistakenly call her Aqua Woman, and she stops in her track, and she's like, no, I have my own name. My name is Mera. I was like, I can get behind her.
Yeah, and speaking to that, when you think of a redheaded princess who lives under the sea, obviously some people are thinking of an animated Disney movie about a girl who's chasing after a boy, but this redheaded princess who lives under the sea is fierce. She is badass. She's dragging the man alongside her. How important is it to have this version right now?
I think this is the right time for this kind of character. This is the right character for this time, and this is the right time to see her. Mera could not be coming into the world at a better moment. She is a badass, fierce superhero in her own right, one who is independent, has agency, has strength, and takes no crap. She is a strong, driven, unstoppable, formidable partner in her own sense, equal to his. So.
Is this the first time that one of your characters has had an action figure? As much as I wanted there to be an All the Boys Love Mandy Lane action figure, I don't think there was. But is this the first time that you've had an action figure?
To my knowledge, yes. I think this might be the first time I've had an action figure.
Is that a heady thought?
Well, that's what surprised me. I was like, why do I have to think about this? This is something one should just know. I believe this is my first experience with being created into a doll.
Is that cool? Is that going to be the holiday gift? Everybody's getting Mera action figures.
Yeah, I'm not quite sure how to approach that. I have, a niece and nephews, and I was thinking, am I going to be that aunt that's like, here's a doll of myself? Or maybe I will. Maybe I'll just lean into it.
What's so impressive about this film is that so much of it takes place underwater, but you're not underwater. And I remember Jason was like, "Yeah, I'm moving sort of like this and delivering lines." Was that really how it was like? Did you have to kind of move your body to being underwater while you delivered your lines? And I'm just talking about like how difficult was that?
Even delivering lines is difficult when you're thinking about having to do it under the sea. Mm-hmm. So everything becomes more challenging. Making anything look natural on camera is somewhat of a challenge if you're acting, and that should be the goal, is to make everything look natural or as natural as possible. But doing that while you're attached to, these really strange harnesses, and you're having to play out all of these action sequences or fight sequences or stunts or even just plain dialogue lines, everything becomes much more difficult when you're doing it while suspended in the air by, two small, thin lines, managed by other people. And for me, it helped. I did some training for this. I trained for many, many, many months beforehand, and a lot of my training involved martial arts and a particular kind of martial arts that incorporated a lot of fluid movements and motions. So I think that was helpful.
That's cool. What do you think about a Mera spin-off movie? Does she deserve her own movie?
I'm saying it right here, right now. First, Mera, hello.
Why do people need to go see Aquaman on the big screen?
Because that's the way to see this movie. The big screen is the way to see this movie, and this movie is the reason that you go to the cinema. This is a cinema movie. It is, when I watched it in the cinema with a full audience, and it was so much fun to just see and experience and feel the vibration of everyone experiencing this whole world. I mean, this is a whole world that James Wan has created. Aquaman is an adventure through a completely new universe that we haven't seen before, and having that experience at the theater, that I can say for myself, it reminded me of going to the movies when you're a kid and being transported. That's what it reminded me of. So you have to see it in the theater.
My brother has come from the surface to challenge me for the throne.
I call it an ass whooping.
All right, so talk about Orm in this movie. Is he just like the ultimate environmentalist, or does he use that to mask this kind of power-hungry side that he has?
I don't think he uses it to mask the power-hungry side. I just think that's how he has been brought up. I think that's so his reasons are very, I think, understandable, sympathetic, and justified. Meaning that the surface world has destroyed his oceans. His actions and the way he goes about it, I think, are definitely informed by having a mother and father who had a loveless marriage and a probably terrible dad, and so that's all he knows is how to rule with an iron fist, or a gold fist, or a coral fist, I guess.
So now this isn't your first rodeo with a comic book movie, superheroes.
Right.
What's it like, sort of being on the other side of the cape? Which is more fun, playing the hero or the villain?
These are if this is all I ever do. I mean, knowing that my film canon includes Dan Dreiberg and Orm is pretty awesome. I mean, I'm so fortunate to. They're such great, eclectic, different kinds of guys. I mean, this, just because of the nature of the filming, was such a different beast. And because with Aquaman, I mean, with Watchmen, I actually had very little green screen work. It was very practical, and so it never felt strange. It always felt very grounded. This is, when you're hanging in wires for most of your scenes, it just was a completely different experience. So they're vastly different. I just traded in the cowl for a Ocean Master mask.
And talk about shooting some of that stuff, because your character pretty much the whole time is underwater. And it looks so incredible sort of when it's realized, but how complicated was that on set? Like what were you doing that you had never done before that you had to add on as an extra layer
Almost
to your acting?
everything was something I hadn't done before. I mean, that being said, acting is acting, and I've done a lot of different kinds of genres and different roles, and I come from the theater, so none of that stuff scares me. The language, the melodrama, the theatricality of it, the operatic nature of this guy, that doesn't scare me. I like to rise to the occasion to that. The technical aspects, absolutely. I mean, we've never done this kind of fighting before. Most people haven't done this. Even our stunt team hadn't done this amount of wire work. And when you're just even doing a 2-page dialogue scene and spouting out these monologues while you're in some kind of a harness flying around the room trying to look like you're swimming, it just felt like some weird avant-garde theater. I gotta say, it was Willem and I, maybe because it's Willem and he's such a great actor and from the Worcester group that that you really did feel like you were doing some strange theater. But I loved it because it actually made you really concentrate on the other actor, because you weren't getting lost in something else. You only got each other because there's literally nothing else around you. Me, him, and Dolph, sort of flying around the room together.
Talk about your relationship with James Wan. You've been together with him for a while. I feel like that relationship between actor and director is one that not enough people talk about. And what is it like being with James, and why is that relationship special to you?
I think anytime, I think the trust that you have in your actors and your directors is paramount. It's so important. Can it be done like that in one movie? Sure. And I've had some great relationships with directors I've only worked with once. I think with James, there's an amount of comfort in working with someone, but there's also, I know that he's going to push me. I know that I'm going to demand the most out of him and ask tons of questions, and he's going to demand the most out of me. So when you have that kind of working environment, it keeps your creative juices flowing. It's not like we get along, so we're like, we got this. This will be easy. We're excited to get to work. And so if I look at, for us in that genre, whether it's Kurt Russell and Carpenter or, certainly De Niro and Scorsese and now DiCaprio and Scorsese, I think any relationship, you just want trust, An actor just wants to feel comfortable that I'm going to put myself out there and you're going to take that and go further with it and not judge it. So I think he certainly brings that out of me, and I hope I bring it out of him.
This is the exact spot that Volko gave me my first swimming lesson.
I already know how to swim.
Not even close. You have to forget all the teaching of the surface world. Go deeper. Uncover your Atlantean instincts.
This is not your first rodeo with a comic book movie. You were in the first 3 Spider-Man films. What's the difference between the two experiences?
They're as different as the directors, different as the principal characters. What I have to do in the movie is very different. And so much has changed as far as the level of effects. And it's hard to compare. I don't have any fun comparing them. I mean, I live it, so I don't have to make the comparisons. But this certainly, it's hard to connect it to Spider-Man, for example.
Do you have a favorite now, Aquaman or Spider-Man?
No, not at all, not at all.
Having been a big part of these 2 different eras of comic book movies, how would you say they have evolved since you did those?
Well, certainly the effects have gotten very differently, have developed a lot more. Certainly the scenes in this are more spectacular. Spider-Man had a very strong story, and I think that series was a beautiful series of movies, particularly the very first one. Characters were very strong. It was a beautiful mix of comedy and drama. This has those elements, too. The big difference is the size, I think. This is really muscular and huge and spectacular. It's more like a fantasy film.
Yeah, speaking of the size, James Wan shared a photo of you recently, Volko riding a giant shark. Yeah. Do you see a photo like that and you're like, that's it, I'm good. I've ridden the giant shark.
Good, yeah. No, well, of course, when I'm shooting and I'm not riding on a giant shark, I'm shooting on some green innocuous cube, But that's where the pretending comes in.
Exactly. Is that what they put you on for that? Like, what are you on a cube?
Yeah, basically. Yeah. But you know, there's a lot of wire work in this for me, and that was fun. And I knew that was we were going to do that because when you have strong physical tasks and strong physical challenges, it really roots what you're doing. It roots the pretending. And got to do spectacular things. I mean, maybe you can't tell in the finished film so much, but, you know, sometimes 60 feet up in the air and able to dive down to just inches of the floor and, you know, do barrel rolls and things like that. Yeah, it's a lot of fun.
It's got to be wild.
Yeah.
I love the complexity of Volko, because this is a guy who physically is sort of aligned with Orm, but I feel like in his heart he's aligned with Arthur. Do you think this is a guy that knows exactly whose side he's on, or do you think he's torn?
He's torn, but you know, I don't want to give too much away. I mean, his position, he's working two sides against the middle. And I also think in the course of the movie, maybe he changes because there's some flashbacks in the movie. I don't know what to say and what I can't say, but in the flashbacks in the movie, he's a little skeptical about what what Arthur's talents may be. Arthur really comes into his own, but Volko is kind of old school Atlantean, and he learns a lot from and he's surprised by Arthur, the Aquaman character, because he really does come into his own. And he also teaches Volko something about the surface people. And it has a lot to do with the fact that he's got this kind of compassion, this human compassion, and this kind of live and let live easiness that allows him to, you know, understand how the two worlds can coexist peacefully. And Volko may be old school and may be involved in the intrigues of a civilization that he saw rise and fall, but he's kind of coming around. He's coming around to a new way of thinking, and any time that happens, that's cool.
And he's a great mentor. I got a Karate Kid vibe.
Yeah, you get a little
like a Mr. Miyagi vibe.
You get a little taste of him, you know, imparting some of the wisdom of the old culture to Arthur when he's a young guy.
A hero.
I feel like you are a guy who's mastered the horror genre. You delivered my favorite Fast and Furious installment. Why a superhero movie, and what did you learn from doing those kinds of films that you brought to here?
Why a superhero movie? You know, I'm a big fan of sort of superhero comic books growing up, or just comic books in general growing up. And you know, and obviously the opportunity, the chance to do a character that's never been done before, you know, was very exciting for me. There's a fair few superhero movies out there in the landscape of superhero films, but the opportunity to play with a guy that the world has never kind of really quite seen before was what was exciting, and also the opportunity for me to do a world creation film. That was something that I've wanted to do for the longest part.
You know, so you inherit this version of the character from Zack Snyder. When that happened, what did you look to bring to Aquaman that maybe we hadn't seen yet in Justice League?
Yeah, you listen. I was I was involved in the in that process early on when they were in the midst of cooking up Justice League, and so so it was something I was mindful of. I was aware of what they were doing, and realizing that that ultimately I'm picking up the character where they leave off with Justice League, and the thing that I wanted to kind of make sure that I could do was make it an origin story without it being a prequel. But what's so cool about where I pick up the character at the start is, he starts off as a loner. He starts out as a guy that kind of doesn't quite fit in right into either worlds, and he keeps to himself. Is great because it allows me to then take him on this hero's journey to becoming more accepting of who he is and becoming more accepting of the two different worlds, and realizing that he's actually the best of two worlds.
He brings back the iconic suit in this one. Was that always there from the beginning? Whose decision was it to bring?
From the very beginning, I wanted to put in the hero suit, the classic sort of suit from the comic book, and even like his sort of classic, old school trident as well. The trident obviously for me in this was his Excalibur. King Arthur in search of his Excalibur was basically my sort of plot narrative.
Now, Jason talks about wearing that suit for the first time, not seeing himself in it, but seeing your reaction to
Right.
seeing him in
Right.
it. When you saw him in that suit for the first time, how did you feel? Did you feel like, here's Aquaman?
Yeah, I mean, like for the longest part, when you're designing it, you're designing it on paper in a computer sort of context, and then when you make it, it's on a mannequin, right? And you're sort of putting it together, it's on a mannequin, so you're like, okay, that looks cool. But then when you put it on the person that you made it for, put it on a human being, and ultimately it's Jason Momoa that the costume is made for. I mean, it just literally the character just came to life, and I just could not believe it, and it was a pretty incredible moment. Yeah, it made me kind of go, okay, you know what? All the effort and time and energy it took to get the suit right, to get it looking cool, was the right thing to do.
Not only do I feel like this is the most ambitious DC movie, I feel like it's also the one that has the most fun. How important was tone as a conversation starter coming into this film in terms of, having that humor, having that lightness, having that breezy kind of feeling to it?
I said that from day one when people would interview me, when I was just starting out making this movie, and I said, I want to make a fun movie, and everyone was giving me crap for saying, oh, he's saying the buzzword fun. And I'm like, no. I don't really know any other way to make an Aquaman movie and not have it be fun and adventurous and be a bit tongue-in-cheek, and cheeky at the same time. I feel like that's what the comic book was, and you gotta acknowledge that, you gotta lean into that, and go for it.
I also love the fact that Julie Andrews does a voice in the film. How did that come about? How did that happen?
I've said that when I was designing the Karathan creature, which is my own version of the Kraken, I wanted the most powerful creature on Earth to be a female character, rightfully, and then the next step was for some reason I kept thinking that. I kept thinking I keep hearing British for some reason. I kept wanting her to be British. So I started, kind of like, putting kind of names together, and the names that I sort of put together were Dame Helen Mirren, Dame Judi Dench, and then Dame Julie Andrews. And very fortunately for myself, that I think Julie told me this, that she said her grandson is a big fan of my work and a big fan of these films, and really wanted to see Grandma in this film. And so I really have him to thank for that. And Julie was just amazing. I mean, I just cannot believe it when I was directing her that I'm like, oh my God, I'm directing Julie Andrews.
What was it like? Have you watched this film with an audience yet, complete? And I'm just curious to know what it was like.
I've watched it a few times, test screenings and stuff like that, and I always get very nervous and anxious with all my films about watching it with an audience, but it's I think this movie was designed to be a crowd pleaser, and so it's a fun one to watch with an audience, just like my horror films are. I make my movies for sort of like the big communal crowd, and I really think it's how it needed to be enjoyed. And with the vista and the visual of the film, it really needs to be experienced on the biggest screen if you can.
Was there someone who surprised you the most in this film, in terms of your cast?
I mean, all of them are fantastic, but I think a lot of people were actually pleasantly surprised at how awesome Dolph Lundgren was. And I'm like, not for me. I was like, I always knew that he was amazing, and that's why I cast him in this. And Dolph is great. Even growing up with just all his movies in the past. I remember watching him in Johnny Mnemonic, and then going, wow, Dolph is so charismatic in this role. He's so good in this film, and I've always kind of had him in the back of my mind. And when it came time to cast this role, of an elder statesman king, but who potentially was a great warrior at one time, a great powerful king, you believe that Dolph could play that character, and Dolph is great. I mean, everyone was great. And Nicole Kidman is amazing, and this was my first movie with Nicole, and I feel very fortunate to have worked with her.